This is Ileana Betancourt, and I'm excited to welcome you to the first of our Teacher Talk webinar series. We have 3 exciting webinar opportunities. The first one here is on creating formative assessments online and going paperless with digital assessment. And the next one next week is on Google Classroom and its integration with Edulastic. And then the final one is focused on the digital reports and data that you get from doing online assessment. So we're very excited to share with you, and we'll just dive right into it. This is me. I'm here sharing with you from California, and it's sunny today. I just want to make sure everyone does know how to use the chat. So if you could jump over to the chat box, you should see a little black menu, and in that there should be an option to click on the chat, and that should pop open your chat box. And from there, you can just type in there. Make sure that you're typing to everyone. So if you can see right here, let me see, a little box, just make sure it's set to everyone so that everyone can see what you're saying and we can keep the conversation going there. Okay, great. Why don't we test out that chat, and in the chat box, just type your name and where you're joining in from, what state you're coming from, and the weather. Just something simple. Great, so we have
February in New Jersey.
Michigan, California, Arizona, New Jersey. I'm assuming New Jersey on February-like means that it's pretty warm. Tennessee is rainy. Aw. We were supposed to get a lot of rain here today, but we did not. A warm February, it seems. Arizona. Oh, it sounds so nice, the White Mountains. Michigan is chilly. Oh wow, 60 degrees in February. Seems like it's a pretty warm day for everyone across the board. So hopefully you got some time outside today before joining us this evening. I will just show my video quick just so you can see me. So here I am. I'm going to be here kind of running things, but then also Leslie, my colleague, right there. She will be on the chat. So if you have any questions or comments, she will address those directly in the chat, while me and the other teachers who are part of this webinar will be sharing with you our experiences with digital assessment and tips that you can implement into your classroom. Okay, turn off the video. All right, so again, I think what's really important is teachers hearing from teachers, because you guys know best. I'm just here to help share digital assessment and what I know, but you guys are on the ground and you're actually using it in the classrooms. So today we're going to hear from Betty Scola from Waterford Township, Stephen Humble from Phoenix, Arizona, and Nerissa Gerodias from San Jose, which isn't too far from where we are. This is going to be about an hour long. We'll leave plenty of room at the end for questions. And I just want to see who is here today. So I'm going to start a poll. Where's the poll? Asking what subject you teach, what level you teach, and then also what's your experience with digital assessment? Okay, so let's end the poll. It looks like we have a lot of math teachers here. We share it? We'll share. Yeah, we'll share results. Okay, so we're sharing the results. I think you should be able to see it. We have a lot of math teachers currently with us today, but a nice distribution of English, science, and history and other as well. Mostly middle school, but everyone. And then if you scroll a little, Leslie, thank you. So it looks like some people are just getting started. One person has given 1 assessment so far, and then there are a few people who have given a couple or plenty all the time. So hopefully those of you who have experience, don't experience, everyone hopefully can chime in on what they know and or what they're trying to learn or any questions that they have. Again, let's keep this open and conversational. All right. Closer. Okay. All right, so here's the roadmap. We're going to talk quickly about the advantages of going paperless, best practices for digital assessment, and then we're going to hear examples from Dorian, Steve, Nerissa, and Betty. And at the end, we'll have time for questions. And right now, I'm going to hand it over to Betty. who will jump right into the advantages of going paperless with digital assessment. So Betty, I'm gonna go ahead and give you control. There we go.
Okay.
And we can hear you. So go ahead, I'm gonna mute myself during this portion.
Okay. With testing, and I know that sometimes we feel like maybe it's not worth it because there's a lot of setup work to happen, but it really is. Not going forward, I'm trying to hit the enter. Eliana, you think you can take back control maybe because it's not working now?
Oh.
There we go.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was preparing to give a test. And if you look on the left-hand side, you can see, I'm sure we've all had those kinds of days where the copier's jammed and you're just waiting in line to make your test and it has to be given that day. We've all had the stack of papers with testing where we just see it when we're done testing and we know we have so much grading to do and just having pencils ready and all the things we need. Well, when you want to give a test on Edulastic, all you simply need to do is go into one screen and assign. And if you look at the top, it says assign this to, and you can put multiple classes. So normally I have 5 classes of the same thing, 5 4th grade classes, 5 6th grade classes, and I just put them all in at once and get it ready to go. Okay, you can go on.
Hey Betty, are you talking? I can't hear you right now.
There we go. I think when you keep going back and forth, it's muting and unmuting me.
Oh, that's strange. Sorry about that. All right, we'll keep an eye on it and make sure that you're unmuted.
Okay, great. So I was saying, if you look at the person on the left, he brought home all the paperwork to grade and they're working on nights, weekends, every free moment you have, you're grading, or you can simply look over at the Edulastic screen and you can do this while the test is happening and you can see how the students are doing. Anything that's multiple choice, multi-select, any of those things gets graded automatically for you. So the turnaround time for the student feedback is the most incredible part of Edulastic because before you would wait days to get a test back. It could be one day, it could be a week before a teacher got a test back to you. But now with Edulastic, the results come to the student the minute they hit submit on the test. And they can go back in and see how they've done, and they can look at each individual question and see what they did wrong. And it really gives them a chance to reflect on what they're doing and maybe make them better students. Understanding the answer. I'm sure we've all seen papers that look like the left-hand side of the page where you have no idea what the student is trying to say. Well, on Edulastic, it's all typed. So there might be spelling mistakes, there might be grammar mistakes, but at least you can decipher what you want to do. Benefits of digital assessment. Next. Okay, so this is really nice. You have a control panel that shows you all of the classes that you have, and you can see that I have quite a lot because I teach everybody in the school. And you also have a screen where you have all of your assessments available to you. So in here you can see I have 3rd grade assessments. If you scroll down, I think I have 40-some assessments right now that are in there. Next. And there's tons of questions that are already made out there for you. There's assessments you can take, or just questions that you can take to quickly put a test together. Next. This is the real power, though. This is where you can create your own questions. Now, there are so many formats in here. There hasn't been a question yet, a type of question that I've tried to create that I haven't been able to create in Edulastic. Tables, drop and drags, essays, multiple choice, matching, anything you could want, you can make an assessment. Next. And then the data. The data, I'm a math person. I was a math major in college in computer science. So the data to me is so incredible. I can see exactly where the kids are having problems and I can identify what questions are weak so that I can go back and help the kids just in those areas instead of having to focus on everything again if this class didn't do well. Next. And that's it for me.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you, Betty. So those are some of the differences between, being on paper versus on digital assessment, and also the advantages of going paperless. And I just want to point out that some of the best practices for creating digital assessments online are very similar for creating assessments as you traditionally would, where you are writing them out and developing questions. The big advantage, though, again, is that you can read student writing and you can save time with data and the information that is being put out at you. So there's a lot more flexibility and elasticity there. We took a look at the average length of assessments in Edulastic and have found that the tests and quizzes that are being given are usually about 10 questions each. It varies a little bit by subject, and it varies a little bit by grade. As you can see, geography has really, really long tests. Contrary to that, ESL is a bit less. And then same with grade. It kind of dips in fifth grade and fluctuates a bit, but overall 10 is a magic number. And again, for more standardized assessments, usually that number jumps up to about 15 questions. But for tests, for quizzes and activities, it's usually around 10 or less questions for students. You don't want to overwhelm them. And then the other nice thing about digital assessment is that you can engage students, and like Betty mentioned, using those TEIs, those technology enhanced items, can really work to your advantage in making a question more engaging. For example, using the drag and drop adds a bit more interactivity to the question. And then there are other ones like label the question, which you can see down here. And you can also incorporate images or videos to make it more exciting and engaging and really hook students. Over here is a video of First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt giving a speech. So after viewing that, immediately students can start entering their questions. And if you want to learn how to make these TEIs, we have a whole suite of videos that help you navigate and understand how to use them. And then you can use multi-part to dive deeper. And you can also pair these with a hands-on activity. So having students work on these assessments and assignments while also looking at a cell in a microscope while answering questions about a cell, for example. Okay, now we're going to jump into some examples from teachers themselves. All right, Betty, I'm going to hand off to you again. If you could just give a brief introduction of you and your role at your school, and then dive into the content you're going to share. Just say next when you want me to go to the next slide like we did before.
Okay, great. All right, so my name is Betty Scola, and I'm a librarian and a tech teacher at Waterford Township Schools in New Jersey. And my job is really to go in and help the teachers to learn how to push technology into their lessons. A lot of them still doing things the way things were done 10, 15, 20 years ago. So my job really is to help them out, and Edulastic is one of the things I brought to them. Okay, next. So our big motivation for going paperless was when we saw our first year PARC results, which were just horrible. They did not meet anything that we thought that they would meet. And we knew that we needed to get started assessing our students digitally so they were comfortable when the PARC test time came. Because when we watched them the first time, we saw them just heads in their hands, they just couldn't do it. They couldn't answer the questions online the way we wanted them to. Next. So since we're a Google school, our first attempt was Google Forms. It was paperless. It was easy to grade. We used the Flubaroo extension that was there. The cons were the question types were so limiting. We really couldn't do what we wanted to do. And you needed to use add-ons in order to print a copy for the students, because if you've ever used Google Forms, you know that everything just goes into a giant spreadsheet. So we were using Autocrat to kind of make the tests printed out when the kids were done, but then again, we weren't really paperless anymore because we had to give it back to the kids and we had to send it home with the kids. And I don't know if you've ever used any of these add-ons before, but they were actually blocked at our school. So I had to go in and type in 2,000 lines of Java code on every Google form just to be able to print out this copy for the students to review, which was not a lot of fun. Next. So I did a Google search and it led us to Edulastic. And I can tell you, I was just amazed. The pros of it are the question types. They mimic PARC exactly. Even if you're not a PARC state, just having access to all those types of questions really help you out. It syncs so easily with Google Classroom. All you need is that little code that you would normally give your students. You just go in, you click that, and it populates your class automatically. The instant results to the students and to the teachers. There was no need for us now to print a copy for review because it's all online. Even the parents could log in at home as the student and see the test and see any teacher feedback that was included for them. We can share across the district, which means we can split the workload of the test creation. Most of our grade levels have 5 teachers, so if they're doing a weekly test on Edulastic, they only have to create one every 5 weeks, and then the next teacher would do it. The reports make it really easy to identify areas of weakness. I was just in a meeting with our curriculum supervisor, and she brought up our math benchmark, and she was like, question number 3, only 29% of the students got right. So that was an area that they knew that they needed to focus on. And the customer service is just great. They get right back to you. And the cons, well, I still haven't found one. Looking, but I haven't found one yet. Next.
Oops.
Okay, so the plan that we devised, we used the Park release questions and we entered them into Edulastic to prep our students. Park releases every year some of the test questions that they're not going to use again, and it was real easy to recreate them in Edulastic, any format, any type of question we could do. And we started using Edulastic across our curriculum for paperless tests, so the students were actually comfortable with the online testing. Now, having the students instantly review what they did right and wrong, not days later after the test was graded, their reflection really made them better test takers, because I can watch them take a test, hit that submit button, see the results, and go, oh, I answered A, I meant to answer B, oh, I kept second guessing myself. But normally when you handed them a test back days later, they were so removed from the test that they weren't really reflecting on what they were doing and what mistakes they made. Here, it really made them think about the test. Next. And our results, we had some confident test takers and happy teachers. Watching those kids take the Park the second year, they were so prepared. They had no kinds of problems. And I was the person who had to run in if there was like a question like, how do I do this? How do I do that? I had none the second year. They were good. They knew what to do. Next. And here's some of the numbers that you can see. So this was our Park performance. If you look at the light green, this was our math. The level 1 and level 2 are the kids who are really not doing very well at all. The level 3 is approaching, and the level 4 and 5 are the ones that are meeting what is supposed to be met or exceeding it. And you can see our first year with the light green, the level 1 and 2s were pretty high, and our level 4 and 5s were pretty low. After we used Edulastic, you can see that the level 1s really dropped, and I attribute that completely to them feeling comfortable with the test. And you can see that our 4 and 5s really went up. We had one teacher in language arts who went from 26% of her kids being 4 or 5s to 86% of her kids being 4s and 5s, which amazing. And the next slide. This is our ELA results, and you can see really dramatic, especially in the level 4, how much we went up from 15 to 16. So I really want to thank Edulastic for what they've done for our kids, making them better test takers. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Those are really amazing results. Thank you for sharing that story, Betty. I'm going to post a link to her story at Waterford in the chat. We just recently published it on our blog. So if anyone wants to take a closer look, they can visit there. The link is there. Or share it with others. All right, Nerissa.
Hey.
Hi. All right.
Hi.
I'm going to try to give you control of the screen. It might not work. Didn't work for Betty, but if it does, then that will be the way to go. Otherwise, we'll do what we did where Betty.
Okay. Okay, let me try.
Okay.
It's not working for me.
Can you use the arrow buttons to go next?
Arrow
You
button.
can click up or down on your keyboard.
Okay, hold on. Right there. No.
There you go.
Oh, there it is.
That's
I
working.
saw it. It's working. Okay, there.
Okay.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Nerissa Gerodias, and I'm going to share with you my typical day or typical week. As you see in the screen, this is my evening or weekend. I grade a lot of papers, and I take a long time, especially if the writing is like not easy to understand. So I try to find something that will help me with this, and I found Edulastic. Um, on top of this, I have to plan for my next lesson. Papers keep piling up, and
Oh.
what happened?
Presentation.
Going ahead of me. Is someone controlling it?
I'm not touching it.
No,
Oh, I'm not even touching it.
It's moving.
Huh.
it's moving itself.
Okay, now okay, hold on.
All
Oh,
right.
there. Okay, so I'm back. And the hard thing is my students always ask, oh, it's doing it again. It's going on its own.
Do you want me to just take over?
Yeah, can you please control it?
And
Yeah.
and just let me know
Yeah.
when you watch.
When
Say
it-
when you're ready.
yeah.
For it.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the first one. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So my biggest challenge was at the end, the following day that I give a test, my students are asking already what my score, and I'm not ready to give them anything. So I looked for something that can help me with that, and I found Edulastic. So can we go to the next screen? And so here comes Edulastic. All my assessments are in one page. And never to get lost, I used to have students complaining, where's my paper? And it's either I lost them or they did not turn it into me, they did not put it in the right bin. But here, everything is in one place, never to get lost. Can we go to the next slide? And then when I give assignments to my students, I can see their progress right away. So if they started, I can see that they have started. I can see their mistakes, and this is what I see in my dashboard. And sometimes now I'm using Edulastic not only as a summative assessment tool, I also use it as formative assessment. I use it as an assignment. I give them as an assignment for, let's say, the weekend. And so even if we don't have school, I get to see if they have started working on it. And I get to see if they made mistakes. And so I can give immediate feedback to them, but I don't let them see their results, or there is an option where they can see, like what Betty was saying earlier, that they can look at their performance, they could see what mistakes they made. I kind of not do that. I give them only the score, and what I do is I look at their performance. Can we go to the next slide, please? And what I do is I make a screenshot of their thumbnail and send it to them. And I say, please go back and revise. The yellow are partially correct, and the red are completely wrong. So then they do that, and then they email me back and they say they're done, or they email me their work. Can we go to the next slide, please? Here are my students. I noticed that when we're using Edulastic, they tend to be more focused, and they help each other. And they're eager to get immediate feedback. They wonder, oh, what did I do? What did I do? How did I do in number 3? Or did I get it right? And I think they get excited about it. Here, can we go to the next slide, please? As I said, they collaborate during classwork. They ask each other questions. And as they do this, I go around with my iPad and I look at their performance, and then I tell them, oh, go back to number 3. you made a mistake on that, or there's something that you need to fix. So I give them immediate intervention. Can we go to the next slide, please? And one more thing, I allow students to redo their work. Sometimes some of my students, they work, they need to, and they don't have time to finish their work. And so sometimes the deadline is passed and they can't finish their work. So I let them, if they email me, I let them redo their work. So Edulastic makes it easy for me to reassign these tasks to them, and students are, they become more hopeful. They don't give up, because before, when I was not using Edulastic, when they get a failing score, they give up and they say, I don't want to try anymore because I failed anyway. But because now I'm letting them redo their work, they keep trying. So even if they failed 2 times or 3 times, they just email me and say, can I try again? And I just let them by reassigning the test to them. And I think that's a very powerful thing. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is sample correspondence between myself and my students. So sometimes they will call me and they will email me and they'll say, hey, Ms. G, can you extend it 1 more day so I can fix my problems? And I do let them. And then I send them this screenshot. And can we go to the next slide, please? And here's one where they send me pictures of their work if they have questions or if they want to show me what they have done so far. So I think that it gives us a better way to communicate. And I think I have one more slide. One of the advantages I saw are these: no clutter, no mess, no lost papers. I can give immediate feedback, and it allows me to give immediate intervention. They can redo their work. Students can redo their work in a few clicks, and it makes them keep trying. And it's easy to manage missed assignments for absent students. So if someone is absent, all I need to do is resend the assignment to them so that they can do it. And if I ever have to be absent, it's easy to assign tasks to my students. I don't have to go to school to make copies for my sub. And I think that's it.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, and then I think Dorian wasn't able to make it today, but here's a quick slide from her on how she uses it. So she uses it, so she's a reading teacher in Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, for 7th grade, and she uses Edulastic and digital assessment to provide immediate feedback, just like what Betty and Nerissa were saying. The ability to adjust your instruction and be flexible while in the classroom and giving feedback to students is really valuable. And then the students themselves can track their own scores and check them if they're curious how they did or how things are going. For her, the data reports, we have to present data from Common Assessment to the principal, and Edulastic offers a great way to present that data. So it makes it really easy when she has to go to her principal and show kind of how her students are doing. And then for standards mastery, it allows her to understand which standards have been mastered and which ones she needs to reteach. Then finally, for district testing, I guess her district uses MAP or MAP to track student progress, and it's computer-based. So being able to give her students their assessments online is a really great way to allow students to get comfortable with the online testing so that when they get to the test day, they don't have to worry about the mechanics of the test, but they can just focus on the content. All right. And then I'm going to hand over to Stephen Humble.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Oh, yes, we can.
There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Humble. I teach 8th grade science in Laveen, Arizona. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone so that you can see There we go. So hopefully you can see, can everyone see my screen, or can someone see my screen? Or
Yes, we can see
okay,
it.
good. All right, so I'm going to just basically walk you through the process that I use when I assign a quiz from start, where I put it into the computer, to the point where I look at the results. So I'm actually giving a quiz tomorrow, and this is a one-question quiz because it's a writing assessment, so they have to do a writing test. So when I'm done writing the questions, I'll hit review up here, and I'll hit publish or assign. So you have the option to just publish it, which just sort of puts it in your database, or you can actually assign it now. So this is what it looks like to assign a quiz. So I'm going to assign this to all 4 of my science classes. So I'll just start typing in period 1, period 3, period 4, and period 6. Okay. Now, one cool thing that you can do with this, you can actually assign to individual students. So if you happen to write a quiz that's maybe for a student on an IEP that needs modified assessments, you can write a quiz and give it just to 1 or 2 students. You can just type in their name, and their name will start to appear, and you can click it. Right here, you've got assessment window. If you need to delay the start of the quiz, you can change it, and then when it would be due. I'll tell you what I do personally. I open manually in class. That way they don't start early. And I close manually in class. That way, if I have a student who's absent for 5 or 6 days, it doesn't close on them. So I open manually in class, I close manually in class. Some options. You have the option, now this is a writing test I'm giving, so there's no option. But if it's a multiple choice test or something that's objective graded where the computer can grade it automatically, you have the option of giving the students, you can click right there for on assignment submission, and it will give the students the grades right away. It'll tell them what they got. You also have the option of explicitly by teacher, which basically means they're not going to see their scores until everybody's done. I personally like to do that because I don't want one kid to see, oh, number 1 is A, number 2 is B, number 3 is C, and then feed that information to somewhere else. It's just a test security thing for me. If you're doing it as an assignment or as practice, you probably want it to be automatically. You also have an option here of yes or no, meaning for detailed reports, where they will only see their overall score unless you click yes. Yes tells them they'll see each individual question and what they got right and wrong. I like to turn that on because I want them to know what they got right and wrong. If it's a test and there's multiple questions, I like to shuffle up the questions so they're all in a different order. Just, again, it's a test security thing. Calculator, if it's a test that requires a calculator, you can give them an on-screen calculator. And so that's pretty much the process for assigning it. And you hit assign, and you're done. Now, when I go to, you can actually post this to Google Classroom, and I know they'll go into a little bit more detail about that. But once you open the quiz, let's just say I'm going to open it. You have the option of just clicking right here and clicking Google Classroom. And it will actually post a link to Google Classroom. So there is that. That's just something to keep in mind as well. All right, so next, I've given my quiz. Good to go. How do I see my results? Well, this is your dashboard. You can just click on the quiz and it will open up the results and you can see the results. So that's the next thing I do is I monitor the quiz while it's happening. And that takes us to this screen. Now, one thing that I think is really cool is you've got right here the purple donut, pink drop, because I put this in present mode. It takes out student names. So you can actually present this to the class because it's not going to show you the individual students' names. I'm going to leave that on, obviously, just to maintain confidentiality. But if I were to turn that off, these would be replaced by the actual students. So just so you know. So this gives me a lot of information. This blue line right here tells me the average amount of time students took on that particular question. So I can see where they're struggling. Green is correct, yellow is partially correct, and red is wrong. This is the entire class as a whole. Down here, you can see for each individual student, it gives you a breakdown. Now, I can see, for example, for question 2, that they all took a lot of time on this particular question. So I can click it, and I can review each individual student's answers to that question. And I can see if one is being scored correctly. Because sometimes, you know, I'm not perfect, and sometimes I put in the incorrect answers. And of course, the computer just does what it's told to do. So it's going to grade it wrong if I tell it the wrong answer. So this is a good way for me to check to make sure that I put in the right answer for the computer to grade. This also helps me to understand, am I missing something in my instruction? Did I teach something wrong? Okay, because that happens. Sometimes I might, that's the whole point of assessment. I might look at this and go, yep, totally taught that wrong, gotta go back and redo it. So that's one way that you can do this. I can also see which students took a long time on the question. And next to each question, it'll tell you how many seconds that particular student spent on that particular question. And if you sync with Google Classroom, these will actually be their profile pictures that they've created, which I personally like because then I can see who they are. So what I will do is I'll go through and I'll look at this and look for areas of weakness, look for potential problems, things I need to address with my students. In this case, I would look at question 4 and question 14 were the two that really stuck out to me. So this was a question regarding Newton's second law of motion. So I need to go back and I know I need to address this. And actually, in this case, so I would need to go back and address that. The other thing that's nice is on these partially, when you're sorting these on these partially correct, it'll show you, this is a matching question, which ones were right and wrong. So again, it gives you a lot of detail. But one other thing that's really nice is that you can view these by student. So for example, I can go to, let's say, the orange leaf here. We've got a 44%. And I can view all their answers to each individual question just by this one student, okay? So I can go through and I can view their individual questions. I can also sort by, I just want to see what they got wrong so that I know what they got wrong. It gives me some more information. One last view I wanted to show you is over here under Express Grader. This is a great view because this is going to give you every kid and all of their answers. Now it only works for some questions, so multiple choice, multiple answer, some of those questions, but it'll tell me what they wrote in each individual box so I can quickly analyze one specific question. If it says TEI, that means it's a tech enhanced item and it doesn't show in this grid. But I can see all of their answers for every single question. So I can see, is there a common wrong answer? So for example, in this question, I can see that most of them got the math right, but some of them got the direction and the units wrong, which is just as important in this particular application. And I can see a lot of students picking A that were incorrect answers here. So that's the benefit of this particular view, is it gives you more information more quickly, which really helps you to understand what instruction do I need to go back and fix? What do I need to improve on? Is this a good question? Should I just toss this question out? Or did I teach this and they're just not getting it and I need to reteach it? So it's a really powerful view. And so that's what I do from assignment to the end. And then obviously I would put it in my gradebook program as well, but you know, we all know how to use a gradebook. So, and that is pretty much all I had. Unless there are any questions, I will hand it back off.
Oh, yeah, one quick question. Where do you get your questions from? Do you write them yourself or do you get them from the bank?
It's a mix. Now, I teach Arizona Science, so I rely on just other Arizona Science teachers. A lot of them come from our district, but what I use a lot of is we have a program called Galileo, which is what our district purchases for benchmark assessments, and they provide us with formative questions. So my wife works in a different district. They have a different bank of questions that they use. So a lot of my questions come from the standards-based questions that my district expects me to use. I do write some of my own questions as well. So it just varies a little bit. Now, one thing I will say is if it's a question that comes from a bank that we pay for, so for example, like our Galileo bank that we pay for, that we have a right to use that, but that's copyrighted, so I don't share that with the greater community. But if it's a question I write, I do tend to share those. So that's just something to keep in mind that I try to think about with copyright is we don't want to, obviously, you don't want to be responsible for copyright infringement because that'll come back on you from your district. So, but that's where I get most of my questions from. And our curriculum too, our online curriculum, so.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions?
So we have a couple questions
Okay.
about Express Grader and present mode, whether they're premium features.
Okay. Should we address that then?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we'll open this up to everyone for questions because we have reached the end. Thank you, Stephen. That was really great. Really fantastic overview of the workflow for assigning and analyzing digital assessment, as well as reviewing the student responses there. All right, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and then we'll address some of these general questions. Feel free to put these questions either in the Q&A or also in the chat. We can open up the chat to everyone. It's already opened up to everyone there. Okay, so where's my screen share? Here we go. Okay. All right, before we go to questions and answers, though, I just want to say, again, today we've been discussing going paperless with digital assessment. Next week, we hope you'll join us for Edulastic and Google Classroom. We'll be having a panel question and answer session with teachers who have been using Google Classroom and Edulastic. Also, just want to say to keep in touch and follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep the conversation going. And now, officially, our question page. So we'll take the questions now. Okay, so we have two questions about some of the features, and then we just have a question. And then a question just came in about Edulastic in the classroom, which will go to the teachers that just presented. So we'll just start out and say, so the first one is, do you have to have a paid account to access ExpressGrader? The answer is yes. The other grading features and reports you can access with a free account. So you can really see that first page that Stephen showed you with the amount of time it takes for each student to answer questions, the students that got questions right or wrong. You can also still go through and see the answers and respond to them. All that's available on the free account. And then the way that you change the student names so you can make sure that the data is confidential is through present mode, which is a new feature that came out this month. Also comes with premium accounts. So if you or your school or your district has Edulastic Premium, then you can access those features. And then the other question is, so this is probably for you, Stephen, Nerissa, and Betty, is how often do you typically use Edulastic in your classroom?
I will say that I use it, I would say once a week, maybe a little bit more frequently. I tend to give shorter and more frequent quizzes. So usually every 2 to 5 lessons. So I would say with one class, at least once a week, maybe a little bit more frequently. I tend to not like, I tried using it for assignments for a little while and it worked really well. It made it easy to grade, but my problem was that a lot of students thought everything was a quiz. And so they made it so they didn't want to use their notes, or they were afraid to ask for help because they figured it was a quiz. But it depends, if you can get your kids' mindset, because I tried doing that mid-year, but if you can get their mindset, you could really use it every day. If they understand the difference between an assignment and practice and an assessment, you could really use it every single day with them. You could use it for warm-ups, but I tend to use it about once a week or so, maybe a little more frequently.
In my schools, we usually use it with the ELA teachers once a week. They give quizzes or tests. The math teachers use it for their tests, not their quizzes, and for our benchmark assessments. So I would say most students are on it probably 2 times a week, depending on which classes they have.
Okay. Is Nerissa there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Hi.
I use it very often. After discussion, I always have something for them to do in Edulastic, and I like it because they take it seriously. My students take it more seriously if it's in Edulastic. If it's paper, they kind of like not finish it. But if it's Edulastic, they know that I will be able to see the score and I will grade that.
Great, that's good to know. To tag on to the questions that were asked earlier, Leslie's about to send out a link to everyone who's on the webinar for a free trial of Teacher Premium. You'll get it for the next couple of weeks, and you will be able to try the present mode and the ExpressGrader. Any other questions? We are nearing on the hour, but we have a little more time to answer anything else. Has anyone else had any experiences that they want to share with us with digital assessment as well? Give some time people to think. We have a little more time for people if they have any questions or anything else they want to add to chat or chime in. But I do want to say, big thank you to Betty, Nerissa, and Stephen for coming online and sharing their experiences here. It's really great hearing from them. I learned a lot of new things from listening to them and their experiences. And I know that their work in bringing digital assessment into their classroom has been really wonderful. And I think another question. Okay, I just said.
Yeah. So Susan.
Okay, Susan. Cool. So Susan Lair, who has also used Edulastic, said that she uses it about once a week with her fourth graders, and often will put a video in the assessment so she can remind them of the concept that they will be using as a refresher hook, it seems like. And then another question. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, Sarah, I just saw that you wanted to know, can you share? And the answer is yes. It's actually really, 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 really easy to share. So I'm going to show my screen real quick, if there's no objection to that.
Great, go ahead.
Share screen. And desktop 1 and share screen. Okay. So these are all my quizzes. So let's say I wanted to share this quiz that I'm giving tomorrow. Let's just click on it. So when you're working with the quiz and you're ready to publish and assign, all you have to do is, it's right here in this, it gives you options. And even if you do the share assign now, it still gives you these options. You have the option to just build it in your private library. You can share it to your school library, which means anyone in your school can see the questions. Anyone in the district can see the questions, or anybody on Edulastic can see the questions. And then one option you have is, if let's say you share it with your school library, and I'll just go to this one. Right here, it will give you a link, and you can just email that link. So if you want to write an assessment that everyone in your, like if you want to give a common formative assessment to everyone in fourth grade, let's just say, you need to take the same writing assessment. One person can create it, share it with the school or share it with the district, send that link to everyone who needs to give the assessment, and they can all assign that same assessment. So it's a big time saver. I've done that with other teachers in my district. So it's a pretty valuable feature. So that's all.
Hey, Stephen.
Yes.
Now that you're showing your screen, William asked about whether there was a way to store your questions in a database. And, as you know, they're stored in your library.
Right.
Can you show how you would, reuse some questions that you've had before?
Sure. The only way to store questions in the library is actually to create an assessment with that question. So let's say I'm going to create a new assessment, and I'm just going to call it test because it's a test. Right here's how you would do it. So for example, let's say I want to find an 8th grade science question. So I'm in Arizona, so I'm going to go over here to Arizona Science, and I'm going to pick my standard. Let's pick one I've taught. Strand 4, Concept 2, PO1. Explain the purpose of cell division, growth, repair, reproduction. Done. These are all questions that I have written. The way I know that is because you can click right here for private library. And these are questions that I have written that match that standard. You can also click school library and see if there's some from other people in your school, or public library. That's more for Common Core because that would be nationwide. In Arizona, there's not nearly as many. So that's how you would find questions. And then if I want to use the question, I just click review. And there are my questions. I can view it as a student, make sure those are the questions I want to give. There you go. The nice thing is once you pull a question in, if you want, you click this little arrow right here, you can edit the question. So one of the things one of my coworkers teaches Algebra 1, and I teach pre-algebra, which is 8th grade Common Core. We'll go in here, we'll find questions that already exist that are pretty good, and maybe we'll just take them, we'll tweak them a little bit, and then we'll give them. So that's a really powerful option as well. So.
Thanks, Stephen. That's great. Yeah, so all of you, so I just wanted to close that part by saying that all of the questions that you put in any test are automatically saved in your private library.
William just asked, is there a place to attach a rubric? And that's great because I just did that actually on this quiz I was showing you.
This is also a premium feature I want to point out.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So that's a premium feature.
Yep.
But if you have that, when you're on the essay portion, so it's only on essay type questions. So I created a rubric that is linked to AZ Merit, which is our version of PARC basically. And you just create a new rubric or use existing rubric and you can put the rubric in there. So, but it's only on essay type questions. You just click this little box that says grading rubric. So.
And then when you're grading it, you'll just tick off the points for each of the criteria in the rubric.
Correct. So like for me, I have a printed copy in front of me just so I can review it, but I'll go through it and say, okay, that's a 3, a 2, and a 1, and just click them, and it adds it up. So.
Great. Great. So Sarah asked also that she wanted to know if there's a way to add a co-teacher or share results with special ed for progress monitoring. And the answer to that is yes. If you want to add a co-teacher, you can just send an email to support@Edulastic and let them know who you want to add as the co-teacher, and they will get that person added for you.
And then Betty mentioned that in the chat that editing questions is also great if you need to modify for students. So you can use the questions from year to year, but also change them slightly so you can reuse it or refresh it for another test or assessment. I realize that our hour is up, so people who have to log off, I just want to say thank you for joining us and spending a whole hour with us this afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. We hope you'll join us next week for the panel in Google Classroom. We'll continue to stick around a little longer until people have all their questions answered. You can also reach us through email or online at edulastic.com if you have additional questions. So it looks like we have, let's see, another question that did come in.
Okay, let's see. Oh, I do wanted to mention on the editing questions, you can duplicate, so any question that's in the item bank that you didn't write, you can duplicate that question and then edit it. So it's kind of like save as. In case you go there, you'll have to click duplicate and then you'll see edit.
The other advantage to doing what Leslie just said is that it allows you to make a question your own. So if the question looks really great, but you need to adjust it for your location, where you are, or your own class's needs, you can make those changes in that tweak.
Okay, so Karen is asking about, it's great. She says she uses it daily as a bell ringer in 3rd grade, which is great. And Karen had a question about setting it up. And I'm going to answer you via text, I think.
All right. Sounds good. All right, anyone else? Let's see, the chat. Thank you for joining us, Stacy. I teach at Justin, school teachers in the district. Oh, so if you're trying to share this with other teachers or want to do an in-service for your colleagues in your area, you can head online to, we have a teacher training hub that has some PowerPoints and presentations. Leslie's going to post the link in the chat. And you can also reach out directly to us, and we're happy to point you towards any other resources or directions that'll help you. The YouTube videos are a really great resource as well. So yeah, William, if you want to send an email here, I'm going to put my email here. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this up. If you have any final questions, I just put my email in the chat box, so feel free to contact me directly. Again, thank you to Nerissa, Betty, and Stephen for all the really wonderful information and examples that you showed us today. I really appreciate it, and really wonderful to see again what you're doing in your classroom with your students. if you're available next week, join us again, same time, for Edulastic in Google Classroom. Betty will also be one of the speakers for that event as well, so you'll see her again. And share this with your friends. You know, we hope to help provide information to anyone who's interested in digital assessment going paperless who could benefit from this. So please share with your networks, and thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.